Hello again, students. Professor Peter Gregory here with an explanation about the report due for Mod 4 for our class, where I speak about a specific thing. I'm going to show you two specific things here, how to format, but also how to include some very, very important content for your Kibbe Strand reports. Now, you have to go back to the course. What have we been stressing in there, right? To get through Mod 4 successfully and explain it back to management, you have to do a good job with your Excel analysis, which we've been over a number of times. There's other videos for that, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, but now I'm describing something here about how to set up a good report. As you see, when you're out and you're looking at other kinds of articles, we're very visually oriented, okay? And actually, studies have shown that some people are more text oriented, they read. Some people are more oral, they like to hear things. And some people respond to diagrams and pictures and whatnot. And so we try to do as many parts of that as possible to appeal to all our readers. And so, what does that mean? It means, well, forget about the oral part, the as in AURAL or AUREL, as in hearing, okay, not ORAL, as in speaking or anything like that, okay. So, for the purposes of our report, in order to do a good job, and you can include some kind of screen references. You can use screen grabs off your data. Now, that's a very specific way of saying this. You could create it in other ways, like Photoshop, or you might have an output graph from some data analysis or something like that, right? So there's some visual data somewhere, but I'm going to, for the purposes of this discussion, talk about using screen grab for something that might be on the screen. And now I'm going to do two things. I'm going to show you what I mean by putting that into a document, in this case Word, which we use in a course, and describing it well enough and using it to make a point. Okay, so what I want to do is I have a brand new file in Word open here, and as I've described before, I go into the file options here. If you're going to be writing a lot of reports, you're going to probably find what I do is that we like to turn on a lot of the visual cues on the page here to help us lay it out so it's clean and we're avoiding the areas on the left and the right here, which they sometimes call as gutter. You know, we have the header and footer in here to work with and whatnot. So this is repetitious. I've shown this in other videos. I'd like to keep this video short, but probably it's going to go on at least a half an hour here. And just remember that in YouTube, you're able to click your settings and speed this up to 2x or 1.5x to keep moving along until there's something that you need to stop and hear better and back up over and replay again, perhaps. Okay. So within Word, I popped open settings. And under display over here on the left menu setups here, there's a grouping here called always show these formatting marks on the screen. And I click show all formatting marks on there, and it will show you things like when we put text boxes in there, it will have an anchor on some text. Sometimes we'll lock the image like a text box or a image that we use from a screen grab to the text that's describing it, so it doesn't get separated later on because Word does its own reformatting. Okay. And it will show other things like optional hyphens. I don't even know what those are, but hidden text, paragraph marks. Certainly, I'd like to see those. Spaces help, and tab characters. In general, you should be using tab characters, and there's also an indent feature up here, which I have not spoken about. But you should avoid using spaces because the format can break much easier if you're trying to use spaces to format things. So generally, try to use tabs at all. And then quite often you can take groups. Usually you use this with bullet points or numbered lists here, and you use this index feature up here, this in arrows. Click this right pointing in arrow, and it will indent your information. I'll go over that in this video now that I've spoken about it. But I've turned on formatting marks here, and you also can go to advanced. And if you scroll down a little bit, there's one thing that doesn't get caught up here in the display grouping that I catch down in advanced. There's another image or presentation selection that we can do here. Show document content. And what I do is I show crop marks. I like to see those crop marks on my page. It gives me an idea of how much real estate I have to write in. That might be a new term to you, but if you're doing Word documents, or if you're doing web layout, if you're doing websites, what you're really doing is working with very limited real estate. And once you start trying to do a really good document or a website, you realize that what you have is very limited ability to capture the reader's attention using certain grid setup that we look at the Word document in, or say a website, just trying to stay general on that. But I put in the crop marks because that helps me know where my limitations in my document are. And when I say OK here, you're going to see these marks. Okay, so you can see there's the paragraph mark sitting there, and I already had turned on these crop marks here. So these crop marks are pointing, it's like a pointer right here. So it's like a pointer, like that little edge there where these two lines meet is the very corner of the usable space in the body here, okay? And when you do the setup for a page, if you come to layout, all right, you're using a default layout here. These are things you might want to work with a little bit, but we can click on margins here. And by default, we have a 1 inch all around. It says normal here. So we're using the normal default description of we have 1 inch of header, 1 inch on each side, and 1 inch at the footer of clear space that we can creatively use or not use at all. Okay. But there are some other standards here. Sometimes if I want to use as much space as available, this is about as much as you're going to want to go, is 1/2 inch all around, because your printers actually have to grab the paper somewhere. So there's an absolute limit. There's a reason why you can't go edge to edge on these sheets, and that's because there's some process involved with dragging this through a printer, and so they reserve the edges here a little bit. And if you pull these edges for the margin back anywhere lower than 1/2 an inch, you start running into various printers that'll violate their non-printable area, and you'll get a little warning code. It's not a catastrophic error code, but it will print as much as possible. But if you try to go right to the edge on this paper, you're going to be missing about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch on some side, because there's grippers, literally grippers inside a printer that have to grab the paper, and rollers that shoot it through, that need some leading edge there that they can't print on. Okay, maybe you never knew that before, but you can't go edge to edge on these things. All right, that was more than I wanted to get into here, but I think that's helpful. In some cases, you might want to change the orientation from portrait to landscape. As you can see now, landscape means it's wider than it is tall. But portrait means taller than it is wide. That's usually how our reports go. Okay, let me get rid of that. Okay, and you can play around with columns and such and make it look like a newsletter and all, but again, that goes beyond what I want to describe here. But there are certain things that if you use columns for, it makes it look very, very professional. But again, I'm just trying to describe the minimum format in the first video that I put out that you've watched, and I described the minimum formatting that goes on in here. And right now, I'm not even going to go through all of that again. You have to watch that other video first. But I will do the minimum here, so it's repetitious and you see how to do it. So let's get ourselves a 2-page report going here. Why? Because the cover page is formatted differently than the rest of it. Right now, I have one sheet here. And to work on the header and footer, what I do is I double click in the header or footer area, and Word knows it flips over into a different mode here. And under header and footer tools with design, there's a couple things that we can do here. Okay, so I'm going to set up the header here. We only have one page rolling so far, and I'm going to say this is just a demonstration of, let's say, inserting. I'm just going to call it pictorials in MS Word. That what I'm really describing here, the real goal of this, might as well write it right in here. So we're going to show how to minimally insert a pictorial, and that could be a graphic, a photograph, whatever it might be, and provide reference, description, should say title in there somewhere, and actually a little bit more narrative to explain why it supports your theories, substantiates their viability or credibility. See, that's what this video is really all about. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that. We have a single page sitting here, and we know we need 2 pages. And I'm going to hit Control Enter. That gives us a second page. Okay, and what I'm doing, I want to come back up. It looks like when I came back into the body, I just double clicked into the standard body area, this narrative area here, and I did a Control Enter, and you get this page break here. Now, if I hadn't turned on show all this information that I had gone through, I showed you under the options setting here, which I had just gone through here, I don't think you get this page break uh, enunciation here, and you wouldn't know that that was there in your regular document. That's one of the reasons why I turn these things on. I want to know everything that's going on that's affecting how my document looks. Okay. So we talked about we wanted a cover page, okay? And when we do a cover page, we want to get rid of the header footer information. So I'm going to double click back up here in the header, and I'm going to do this one click that says, give me a different first page. To go beyond what I'm doing in this video just a little bit, like give you like the version 201 of Microsoft Word formatting, is you can click different odd and even pages. And the reason for that is if you're actually going to publish this, if you do something like we're going to do here, okay, so I said different first page, right? Let's see where we are here. Okay, so different first page. What it did was it took away any header information that we might have had up there, which I guess I might or may not have. I wrote some information up there in the header, demonstration of inserting pictorials into Microsoft Word. Okay, and that went away. Okay, so it went away on our cover sheet. I'm going to double click back in the narrative body area here that we have, and we're going to put it in here, cover sheet, and then there's a little description here, and you can do such things with your text here as I really like this feature. They added a bunch of versions of Microsoft Word where you don't even have to type in and hunt down what the right size of your text is. You just use these up arrow and down arrow keys to change that around. Okay, so one thing about the text on your cover sheet, this has been entered strictly as text, and it will be formatted, or it has available to it all the formatting that normal text that you can deal with that with, or normal processes in Microsoft Word that format simple text. Okay, so one of the things you could do with this as simple text is you just center it like that. Okay, so this is about the simplest case possible of creating a sheet, and let's just increase this a little bit, the size of this. Whoops, not grabbing it one more time. Okay, so let me grab that. Let me bump the size up on that a little bit, like that. And hey, let's just say, let's center that as well. Okay, within a few keystrokes, we have something that even looks like a report. That's great. Okay, so the cover sheet, we did a different front page. It doesn't have any header information in there. It has no footer. If you wanted to put a header or footer in here and you double clicked in there, I just double clicked into the footer, feel free. You can go ahead and create a different header footer on there. It's just that at minimal formatting, to create as little overhead work on creating a nicely laid out uh, report that we're doing here, I don't think it looks good. And it's just, if you want to play with that on another report, go ahead and figure out what looks good and what doesn't. So then when we drop down into page 2 here, our header says demonstration of inserting pictorials in MS Word, okay? And according to our other video, I'm going to repeat some of the things that I did in there just so it's consistent, so you understand that I'm still supporting the first video and anything here, even if I happen not to have included something from there. So what we want to do with headers and footers here is we want to insert a separator line here. So we go under shapes, you just grab yourself a line, and I usually lay it down right over the dotted line. Okay, so this dotted line, whoops, not going. One more time here. Control Z that out. That did not go where I wanted to do. Let me do that again. That didn't work the way I wanted it to. But what you do is you start with, I'm using just a mouse right now, and you can drag that across the sheet. And I have some guidelines here, some artificial guidelines that let me get a separator line there. Now, if you hold down the Shift key, it will hold it to, I think, look, it goes around 45, it snaps to 45-degree angles. So if I hold down the Shift key, it makes sure that it's very horizontal there. I just let go of my keys, and I have a very horizontal separator line for the header. And while it's still active, I Control C, Control V, and we only have 2 pages, so I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to move that while we still have header and footer mode selected. We're still working in header and footer. I drop it in here. So we'll have matching. Okay, so we have matching separator lines, something from the first video I did. Okay, and then what else do we do down here in the footer? Tab, and we're going to insert page numbers, and I'm going to do it at the current position. And usually I have to scroll down just a tad to pick up. I prefer this page X of Y format, so I know how many pages there are in a document and what page I'm on. just a habit I've gotten into over the years. I kind of like that page numbering. You could go and change fonts and do a little more styling on it if you so care to do, but you do not have to for this course. I'm going to double click back in the body, and then I can type in here. Okay. So the way that the your report will go is your first page will be an executive summary, but now I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to pretend that we have one above here. And what I'm going to do is, here is the main part of our document, okay? And so what did I say? If we're talking about Mod 4 report here, we could break that up into two major sections, financial and schedule, right? Those are two major things that we made serious discoveries about, did a lot of work in there. And then for each of these, you might think about using it this way, but it works according to how you want to portray the info to the reader here. So you feel free to go ahead and use this structure if it works for you. But if you're seeing it a different way, feel free to invent your other structure. Excuse me, that should be clear to the reader, though. I mean, it shouldn't be disorganized. You're shooting for organization here. So what did we have? We had an ordered list of the different areas around the plant floor. Let's talk about contracts. The contracts area on the 5 different areas. The contracts first, I think, is most important. And again, you can order these in a different way if you have a different logic of how you want to talk about this. But mainly, what we realized through our successes was that we really had to understand contracts, which ones were more viable than others, more attractive than others. So we had contracts, and perhaps we would go to the production floor, would be the second of the 5, production floor. And then we might talk about purchasing and receiving. I think they just call it receiving, but remember, there's a lot of purchasing that goes on in there. Receiving, spell that right. Purchasing, receiving. And then you can have your pick. You have either HR or shipping. Let's do shipping and HR. I mean, I could sit here and I could argue different orders of what we have here because HR is so ambiguous. There's a lot to talk about in HR because it may have been one of the more wily, strange areas to work with. There was a lot of moving parts in there, who you hired and then move them around the floor and whatnot. So you can take a list like this. I knew ahead of time that I was going to put this underneath financial, like in a hierarchical sort of approach on this. So I can, once I grab this, I go to my home menu button and I could either bullet them or I could number them. And I think I will go with numbers here. Excuse me. And if we are consistent, I can Control C. I can copy that, come under Schedule, Control V. And so now we have the same order, the same thought process of the different parts of the production environment that we're in, so that we have these things listed out. So keep in mind the end goal here of this video is to talk about how to insert a pictorial and make it useful to understand anything. Okay, so under financial, when you get all through this, one of the things that we're talking, what is financial? Financial is basically profitability. Okay, and schedule is getting contracts done at all. I say ironically. Okay, so it's a little bit ironic. Is like how do we can get a contract done under time constraints that we're given. We've accepted contracts with a certain time constraint on there, at all. Okay, there's so much in the simulation that you're trying to pull out the basics at least, and how to help somebody get at least through getting the contract finished, much less on time as it is. Okay, all right. So what I'm going to do here is you might within this section on financial is create an take the ordering out of this next item here. So now we're going to talk about profitability. Okay, so we might talk about like a conclusive notes on profitability. Okay, so what we're going to do up above here through these 5 areas of the floor is pick one at a time and go through and talk about what on that part of the production environment impacts profitability. But then we're going to do conclusive notes on profitability. Okay, this is what I really want to get to. I want to write some narrative about this, all right? And so the way that I got here, I want to reproduce what I just did here. I'm going to go through the steps, how I'm writing just another section here, okay? So when you were at the end of a numbered list like this and you hit enter, it automatically drops you down and tabs everything incorrectly. If you look, remember up in Word, these little arrows in this box indicate what the tab structure is for which line that you're on here, right? So it's just copying format at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as you keep coming down the list. And with item 6, it drops your format down so your cursor is right, sitting below where the previous headers or previous section titles were, something like that. Okay. And so what I had done was I typed in there conclusive, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Conclusive. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Conclusive. And if I don't want that to be numbered and I want it to set up as a separate section underneath this, I just come here right before the words and hit backspace. Okay. I hit backspace and it doesn't change the formatting. It's sitting right underneath the text from the other titles of the other sections here. It just doesn't have a number. And quite often you can use this like as a note. Okay, so under HR, you can start here with writing your text. We got rid of the numbering before it. We knocked it off the number list. Now I want to show you something carefully here that you can do is while it's still sitting there, what I just did was I hit enter. When I hit enter, it breaks out from sitting underneath uh, this numbered list here into a new paragraph. Now, paragraph has its own definition here. See these paragraph symbols? Okay, so it thought I wanted at first it to be part of number 5 and just write some text under 5. But when I hit the enter key, it brought it down. If you notice, it aligned it underneath the numbers. And if we hit backspace again, it's going to bring it back all the way to the beginning. Okay, so there's a little bit there. I try to share as much as I can video by video here. You can't teach all of Microsoft Word all in one shot, but I want you to take a look at that. Okay, so you can do some things with formatting after you break out of your numbering. Okay, so where this sits now, it's at the same hierarchical level as the financial title up here goes. Okay, I just wanted to show how that works. Okay, and in so saying that, I'm going to come back to the first version that I did here. Let me delete that. Okay, so if you remember where we were before I hit enter a few times. Okay, so I'm going to from here, I'm going to hit backspace, and I do want my conclusive notes lined up on the numbers here. Okay, and then what we're going to say is I'm going to put this in really short version. You need to expound on this a little bit more, but it was important. I'm going to abbreviate here. Important to consider fundamental costs. Primitive costs for each contract. I'm almost doing this as a bullet form here. Not only was it important to hard dollars for each cost, but it wasn't until I'm doing this for emphasis for this video. It was going to be the percentage of each cost separately. Okay, so this is a big discussion in my lectures. Anybody did extra sessions and other videos that I've done is that we not only have to break it down into its individual costs, but we want to find out what the impact of each of these costs are. Okay, so I'll add that note in there. Okay, and that was really the outcome should have been. You need to be able to explain that. All right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little work in Excel right now. I'm shooting over to Excel. And this is not a complete Excel, but you should be working with your complete Excel. This is the framework that we developed in the course. And this was partially completed by a student. And then I created a video out of this as I went over this and built it out. So you want to watch that video. So yes. Okay. So uh, when you get into Mod 4, you have these 5 contracts. And what we did was we went through and we calculated what the cost of material was, both in hard dollars and in percent that we have here. And we colored the rows, very arbitrary. We said, okay, let's color these rows because we know there's these 3 costs, both in absolute dollars and in a percentage impact on the contract value. Okay, and there was three of them. So here's one yellow. This is why we painted it yellow. I can count them. There's cost one of three. There's cost two of three. We were doing the manufacturing costs, and then the third cost over here in light yellow is the shipping cost. And then finally, we took a look at those combined. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to, now you're assuming or imagining that this is all completed. This is your complete analysis through 12 contracts. Okay, and so now I want to put this in a picture of this. I'm making a point about different costs having to be considered side by side and the total costs for all the contracts, and that led to strategy. Okay, now I'm going to show you something. I'm going to start playing around with this a little bit, and I'm going to build a screen out of what I have here on Excel with just the information I'm interested in to drop a picture back into the Microsoft Word and talk about it. Okay, so now I'm going to use a picture in Word to prove or substantiate or strengthen my argument. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just the good stuff. Okay, so I'm going to take all these columns and hide them. Okay, and now I bring cost one of three right next to the garments over here. I'm going to hide all the long form, all this long form information that we have. And I'm going to hide that. Now we have our second cost sitting next to the first cost. I'm going to hide all the other calculations for the shipping costs, those columns, that. And now what do we have? See, now we have the list of the contracts. We have the dollar and percent cost of the material. We have the dollar and percent cost of the production floor cycle costs, and then we have the dollar and percentage cost of the shipping with the total at the end, right? So what actually what we can end up doing is once we show this, we could show an even cleaner version of this. I don't want to go ahead and do it because I'm going to have to go unhide everything. But what you could do is you could hide everything that I have highlighted here and just show at the end the combined costs of the three costs that we did and the combined percentage of those costs, the impact on the impact on the contract that we had. And as a matter of fact, one thing that in the video we did here was what these two columns show is what the costs were, but in business we really want to know what the profits are, right? So really there would be a column here would be this. If this were correctly titled, it would say cost margin, right? And this would be, that's the dollar cost margin. This would be the percentage cost margin here. And then we would talk over here would be profit as far as dollars and what's the percent profit on the contract value. How much of the contract value did we hold on to? Okay. So this is really the complete picture. This is all your work combined into one screen here. And the point is it's on one screen. Okay. That way I can take a screenshot of it that's clear and show my reader what I'm talking about. Now, one thing I would do with this is I would grab each of these areas. I'm going to hold down the control key. I'm going to grab, I don't think I can work that way. Let me go back. What I need to do is grab one area like this. I'm going to show you something else that you can do. You can draw borders around this. Okay. So I would say, let's draw a thick outside border on that. Let's draw a thick outside border on that. Now it's held my selection up here under the font. I click that and I do a dark border around that. I do a dark border around this. See how your eyes are more easily able to pick up on what we're showing there. And once again, this file I jumped into is not complete. It would be all complete. You wouldn't have these errors of divide by zero or anything else. These would be all numbers, properly formatted, nice on the eyes, that kind of thing. Okay. So now what I can do is I'll use the snipping tool. Use the snipping tool from Microsoft Windows, click New, and it wants me to tell it where to get a picture from. Okay, so you have to be a little bit careful. You grab at the right hand side here, you have to grab that last vertical line without grabbing the gray area next to it. And it looks like I did a halfway decent job where it doesn't show any gray there. That's pretty good, okay? And what you're going to want to do with this is save it. And I'll just save it up on my desktop. And we're going to put that in here is synopsis. You can name it anything you want, synopsis. You might want, if you're saving numbers of these for your report, you're going to want to put a better name on them and keep track of which ones you've created so far so you can put them into your document. Okay, so we're done with this. We're done with Excel. I'm going to go back over to Microsoft Word. And so we're going to drop it in, okay? I'm going to drop it in two different ways. Okay, so we're going to, I can just insert it, insert picture, go back up to our desktop, pick up synopsis, and it dropped it in. As you can see, it dropped it in. So immediately you can gauge how well or good that picture comes in and how legible it is. We're on the bottom range of quote unquote readability of this. And there's a couple things that we could do to stretch that out a little bit. We can cheat a little bit in Microsoft Word, okay? Right? You have to remember there are numbers in your file here that aren't in mine that I use here. You're going to have a complete analysis of 12 contracts. And as you can see right here, this is empty. This would have all numbers in there, okay? Okay, so that what we just did is we just inserted a picture by file. We inserted it and found the file and dropped it in. Okay, the other way that you can drop it in is, let's see, let me go back to snipping tool. I don't think it keeps track of anything, so let me come back over to here. I'm going to go snip it again. This is why I bought my own software that I've recommended in class. It's TechSmith's Snagit, because it saves a library of everything you've clipped, so you can go back to it again. The snipping tool is very, very minimum. Okay, so I'm doing the same snip that I did before. Okay. And the other thing that the other way that you can put it into your document, it's a good idea to file, save it as we did before, but you can also just Control C it and put it on the clipboard, and you can come back over to Microsoft Word. I'm going to delete the one that we have there. That was the first one, and I can just do Control V because I saved it from the clipboard and I dropped it in here. Okay, same thing. It looks the same, came in the same way, except you don't have any backup file to this anymore. If you didn't save it to begin with, you would have no file to go back to in case you gooched it, you deleted it, or something else happened. You have no record of it if you didn't save it off as a file. But you can just transfer from clipboard into Microsoft Word like this. Okay. Okay. So now that we've dropped this in here, if you remember, there's a different formatting techniques for this, and to tell the rest of Word how to arrange text around it. That's what this little drop-down box is here. It's the layout options here. On something like we're looking at here, I would go with top and bottom. Since it's so wide, you don't want Microsoft Word to get confused. Top and bottom means let the text flow down till it hits this inserted picture, and then it will jump all the way below it and start continuing down if you were to write about it. So I think I can show you something here. Notice the anchor. I turned on the visibility way back at the beginning of the video, and I'm going to do something before I do anything else. I'm going to say Exhibit 1. Okay, so this is Exhibit 1. I want this to be Exhibit 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that anchor and I'm going to bring it up here. I'm going to right click on the anchor, and I've got to figure out where to get this. Okay, so I'm going to actually click on the picture, right click, and go to Format Picture. Now, where did they hide it? I'm going to lock that down. I have to see where we do that. What I'm going to try to do is lock the anchor to that text so they never get separated. And it's going to take me a second to remember where they did it in the new. Go under Size and Position, and then there should be absolute. Go to text wrapping, go to position. Okay, so if you go to the position of this drop down, the position tab, you click lock anchor, and that will now show a lock symbol there, and this text is locked to this picture. Okay, so now let's say we wanted to write something above here. What will happen is the text will just flow all the way down to the bottom. It respects the picture in that sense. Okay, so if we resize the picture, if we make it really small like this, it doesn't flow text up to the right over here. So I'm going to Control Z, undo what I just did there. Okay, so far so good. Okay, we've got that in there. We have Exhibit 1. And now we need to write some narrative about this, and so, as discussed in individual sections above, as we discussed above in these plant floor descriptions, it is, we can say exhibit, we're going to tie it in right away. Exhibit 1 is a summary showing individual costs side by side with totals at the end, and the reciprocal profit margins in hard dollars and percentage. Your verbiage here is important. You write that up, okay? See, as discussed in individual plant floor sections above, Exhibit 1 is a summary showing, I'll put in here is an Excel summary. Let's put in an Excel summary showing individual costs side by side from Exhibit 1. We can see contract 1 versus 3. I'm making this up right now. T-shirts have a, tell us what it is in there. Profitability. What the entire video was about. What I just did here was how to insert something and talk to it. Okay. Now, one of the reasons why I suggest getting some image editing, so let's go to Excel. I'm going to show you how it works in Snagit. Right below the cursor or the crosshairs here, it shows me a magnified view of what I'm snipping so I can get exactly to the pixel that I'm after here. So now all there is to do is to bring that over, drop it back into Microsoft Word. We'll delete the old one. We're going to drop in this new annotated one with our arrows on there. Now, when you speak about it in your narration, you're speaking to precise areas in the document, and you can use words to bring readers' attention to it. You describe comparing these contracts and whatnot. So, thanks for sticking with me on this. These are some techniques that, as you start picking up different additions to your ability to do reports like this, can lead to advancement. And I've seen in industry here people that not only are able to go out and get things done, but also come back and report it in terms that the management is seeking. Turn it into management speak for the company, and you'll certainly be advancing. That's why I'm bringing a lot of attention to writing skills within the technical skills that we have here. So thanks for sticking with me, and I hope that helps quite a bit.